All right, so today we're doing something a little different, a deep dive and all, but with a twist. We're talking about barefoot shoes, but not just why you'd love them. We're going to uncover those moments, those times when even the most die-hard barefoot enthusiast is like, yeah, no, not today.
It's kind of funny, actually, the inspiration for this whole deep dive. Our source is this guy, Alin Ciocan. He's a medical physics grad, so we're talking brains and science here, but get this, he's also a total barefoot
The
enthusiast.
best of both worlds, right?
Exactly. And he wrote this super insightful article, just came out last week, called When Not to Wear Barefoot Shoes. You can find it over on Bear Tread if you want to check it out, by the way. That's like the online Bible for all things barefoot
Air
shoes.
tread, got it.
Yeah.
So what's Siokan saying? When are those minimalist kicks a no-go, even for a barefoot fanatic?
Well, he starts off by admitting that even HE has those moments, times when those shoes stay in the closet. And I think that's a really important point.
Yeah, it's about being real,
Huh?
right?
Exactly. It's not about being tied to this ideology, like you have to be barefoot all the time, no matter what. It's about making smart choices for your body. And let's be real, there are a lot of health fads out there.
Oh, tell me about it. It's overwhelming.
It really is. So having this more balanced perspective, it's refreshing. So Chiocan dives into these different situations, times when even he's like, all right, barefoot shoes, you're benched for this one. And the first one he brings up is formal events.
Okay, so no barefoot shoes for, like, a wedding. Really?
Think about it. You're at your grandma's 80th birthday party, right? You're feeling good, totally free in your minimalist footwear. And then you lock eyes with grandma, and let's just say she's not exactly thrilled with your fashion
'Cause I can
choices.
see it now. The disappointed head shake.
Exactly. And Chiocan, he totally gets that. He's not saying those formal rules are right or wrong, but he acknowledges that they exist. And sometimes it's just easier to go with the flow.
Yeah.
So for those occasions where anything less than like polished leather might cause a stir, maybe stick with tradition.
Okay, grandma's judgment aside, it makes sense. But what about when you're out in nature, like hiking through the woods? You'd think that's got to be prime barefoot shoe territory, right?
You'd think so, right? And honestly, they can be awesome for hiking, especially on those well-maintained trails. But even Chiocan, our barefoot guru, he draws the line at extreme terrain. Like you're scaling a cliff face or trekking across a glacier. Those situations, you need some serious specialized gear.
So barefoot shoes aren't invincible.
Sadly, no. And there's actually research to back this up. There was this study, I think it was 2022, in the Journal of Foot and Ankle Research. They looked at injury rates in different terrains, and what they found was interesting.
Hit me with it.
So while barefoot shoes were generally great for what's called proprioception,
Proprio what now?
it's a mouthful. Basically, it just means your body's awareness of where it is in space, like how well your feet talk to your brain.
Hmm.
Anyway, the study found that in super intense environments, those minimalist shoes, they could actually increase your risk of injury by like 15%.
Wow, that's a pretty significant jump.
Right, so it's all about choosing the right tool for the job. Safety first, right?
Absolutely. Makes sense. It's about having healthy feet, which sometimes means a little extra support. But what about work? Are we destined to suffer in those stuffy dress shoes forever?
Well, it really depends. If your workplace has like strict safety regulations about footwear, then yeah, barefoot shoes might not cut it. Construction sites, for example, you often need those steel-toed boots. And Siokan's pretty clear on this. He even mentions OSHA regulations. Those are no joke.
No barefoot freedom on the job site then.
Not if it compromises safety, no. He's all about finding that balance, which is really refreshing to hear.
It's so true. I'm realizing there's this whole aspect of mindfulness when it comes to footwear. We don't always think about it, but our feet are with us every step of the way.
That's precisely what makes this conversation so compelling. It's easy to get caught up in the hype of a trend, but Xiaocan encourages us to pause and consider what's best for our individual needs and circumstances.
And one of those circumstances, as you mentioned earlier, is weather. It got me thinking, are there actually barefoot shoes designed specifically for extreme temperatures?
You'd be surprised. Xiaocan touches on this in the article. He points out that while those thin, flexible soles most barefoot shoes are known for are great for mild weather, they don't offer much protection when things get really cold or hot.
Hmm.
Imagine stepping out in freezing temperatures. Your feet would be popsicles in seconds.
Oh, I can only imagine. I'm definitely guilty of prioritizing style over practicality sometimes. No judgment to my fellow flip-flop enthusiasts out there, but maybe not the best choice for a snowstorm.
Exactly. And on the flip side, scorching hot pavement can be brutal on bare feet, even in those minimalist shoes. Here's the good news. There are barefoot shoe companies now making options specifically for those extreme conditions. You can find barefoot shoes with insulating materials for winter, or even sandals with tougher soles that can handle hotter temperatures.
Wow, I had no idea. It's like the best of both worlds, the freedom and natural feel of barefoot shoes with the added protection you need for those more intense climates. So this whole conversation has got me wondering, what about other activities besides hiking? I see people running in barefoot shoes all the time. Is that something Ciocan recommends?
He's actually a big advocate for barefoot running, but even he acknowledges that high-impact activities like running can put a lot of stress on your feet and legs. He suggests gradually building up your foot strength if you're new to barefoot running, or considering using shoes specifically designed for those activities. It's all about listening to your body and gradually adapting to that more minimalist style.
That makes sense. It's like any other type of training. You wouldn't just jump into a marathon without proper preparation, right? Your body needs time to adjust. But what I find so fascinating about Ciocan's perspective is that he's not anti-traditional footwear either. It's all about finding the right tool for the job.
Exactly, and I think that's where his expertise as both a medical physics graduate and a dedicated barefoot enthusiast really shines through. He understands the science behind foot health, but he also appreciates the sensory experience and potential benefits of barefoot shoes.
And maybe that's the biggest takeaway here. It's not about choosing one type of footwear over another and sticking with it religiously. It's about being informed, being mindful, and making choices that support your individual needs and goals.
Absolutely. It's about having that awareness of what your body needs and making choices that align with your overall health and well-being.
So with all that said, how do we go beyond just knowing when to ditch those barefoot shoes? How do we actually make informed decisions about finding the right minimalist footwear for our unique needs?
That's a great question, and it leads us to a whole other layer of this deep dive. Ciocan's article has given us a great foundation, but now it's about exploring those nuances, the how of choosing barefoot shoes. What are the different types of construction? Which brands are worth checking out?
It's like we've been handed the keys to a whole new world of footwear possibilities. But before we venture down that path, I think it's important to address one more thing that often gets overlooked in these discussions about barefoot shoes.
The cultural aspect, right?
Exactly. It's easy to get so focused on the physical, like how these shoes feel, the science behind them.
Yeah.
But Ciocan brings up this whole other layer, the cultural side of footwear, which is so important.
It really is, and honestly, it's something we could do a whole other deep dive on. What's considered normal footwear varies so much around the world.
It does. I mean, even here, what's expected at a formal event versus like a backyard barbecue, it's totally different.
Exactly. And when you start thinking about traveling to different countries, cultures with completely different customs, what might be seen as totally fine here could be like a major faux pas somewhere else.
Ciocan gives this example, I think it was in his article about visiting certain religious sites. He's a big traveler, by the way. But yeah, he talks about how in some cultures, you're actually expected to remove your shoes as a sign of respect.
Right, and I've heard of that too. It's about being mindful, being aware of those cultural differences, even down to our footwear, which, let's be real, isn't something most of us think about on a daily basis.
Definitely not. But it's a good reminder that our choices, even something as seemingly simple as shoes, they can carry a lot of meaning.
It's like this whole other language we're speaking with what we wear on our feet.
So true. Well, on that note, maybe time to brush up on our international footwear etiquette, right?
Absolutely. Never hurts to be prepared.
This whole deep dive has been amazing. I feel like we've just scratched the surface of this whole barefoot shoe world.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's got me thinking in completely new ways about something I do every single day. Put on my shoes.
Exactly. So before we wrap things up, any final thoughts for our listeners who might be feeling inspired to, maybe dip their toes into the barefoot world? Pun intended, by the way.
Of course it was. Final thoughts. I think don't be afraid to experiment. Start slow, listen to your body, and remember it's not about being barefoot all the time no matter what. It's about finding what works for you.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the world of barefoot shoes. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.